Good morning, students. We were studying chapter number 7, Outcomes of Democracy, that how democracy is a better form of government than the other form of governments. We also studied about the different cases with the democracy, that how democracy is accountable, how it is responsive, and how it is legitimate. Now we come to the next topic, that is economic growth and development. Economic growth means in the term of money, that how democracy helps to produce good governments, and how the democracies fulfill the expectations of the people. It is fair to expect better government, but that will bring better economic development. It is not sure. Obviously, whenever you form a government or whenever a government comes into existence, what happens? We want that the government should be good and fair. Okay, no unfair means, or no, we can say no. And restrictions should be made, okay, that the people who are rich and who are poor, they should not be differentiated or distinguished. Whenever you think, you expect a better government, but that does not mean that better government will give you economic development. Okay, better government does not means that it will provide you with a better economic development, as economic development of the country does not depend upon what type of government it has. Obviously, that thing we can see, that what type of government is made in a country does not, we can say, is not totally dependent on the economic development. Okay, if we have a good or a fair government, it is not sure that we will have economic development, right? There are many other factors which are responsible to bring economic growth to the country. Okay, apart from the government, there are other factors also which are responsible for the economic growth of the country. Those factors are country's population, quantity, and quality. That how much is the population of the country. First, the quantity, and what type of population is there in the country. What is the quality of population? Is the first factor which affects the economic growth. Second, we have availability of natural resources. Natural resources means land, water, and air. Okay, so these are some natural resources. How much or what abundance of natural resources are there in the country? What is the availability of natural resources? Third is the global economic situation. That what is the global economic situation? Okay, we have studied or you have read sometime that there is liberalization, there is privatization, and there is globalization, right? So that also affects the economic growth. Cooperation from other countries, that how we have, how what type of relation a country is having with the other neighboring countries, how much cooperation are the neighboring countries giving to the country. Fourth is priorities and implementation of economic policies, that which economic policies are more important. Priority should be given to that economic policy, and implementation to implement those economic policies. So these are some factors which help for the economic growth and democracy. That apart of seeing of all these factors and all these things, we can say that just not the government, but there are other factors also which are responsible for the economic growth of the country, right? Okay, so here, see here, just a picture is given. Economic outcomes of democracy: housing, healthcare, schooling, hunger. You can see all this. The Cartoon Networks are given in this step. Okay. Now, the apart from economic growth and democracy, we will have reduction of inequality and poverty. Obviously, the number of poor should be reduced. Okay, poverty should be reduced, and inequality which is between the rich and the poor, the high and the low. Okay, so we have to reduce the inequality and the poverty. In actual life, democracies do not appear to be very successful in reducing economic inequalities. Okay, if we want to think, we can think very much. But if you see the actual position or the actual condition, what is the these democratic country is not successful to reduce inequality among people or poverty. The poor constitute a large proportion of our voters, and no party will like to lose their votes. Okay, in today's life also, in actual life, in today's life also, the poor people, the poor population is constituting a large proportion. A large part of them is the poor people, and no party will like to lose their votes. Okay, these poor people are voting for the representatives. Okay, and the party will not like to lose that their vote should go. Okay, because if their votes go, they will not be able to win, right? Yet democratically elected government do not appear to be as keen to address the question of poverty as you would expect them to do so. Okay, the large people, the poor people have a larger proportion of the voters. Okay, and most of the people who are voting for the elected representative are the poor people. But yet also, after forming the government, after the representative is elected, after a democratically government is formed, that government does not do much for the reduction of inequality and the reduction of poverty. Means they do not do much for the poor people who have voted for them. So the situation is much worse in some other countries, just not for India but in other countries also the situation is the same, or we can say it is much worse than our country. In Bangladesh, more than half of the population lives in poverty. Okay, so you can see what is the condition of Bangladesh, that half of the population, or we can say the more of the half of the population is under poverty line. Okay, they are poor. People in several poor countries are now dependent on their rich countries even for food supplies. So here you can see that what is the position of the poor people. Okay, just for their food supply, just for food also, they have to be dependent on the richer countries, right? So this you can see the situation with poverty. So there is a very we can say a very important need for the reduction of inequality and poverty, because most people are under the poverty line, and we have to, or a democratic government has to do much more for the poor people. Okay, then we have the accommodation of social diversity. Now, what does this mean? Accommodation of social diversity. Now, see, you can see here a question arises that do democracy lead to peaceful and harmonious life among citizens? Okay, do democratic, if you form a democratic government, then do democracy give people a peaceful life? No. No society can fully and permanently resolve conflicts among different groups. Okay, many conflicts or many internal strifes goes on. Okay, no society can totally or can totally control all the conflicts. Okay, but we can certainly learn to respect these differences, and we can also evolve mechanisms to negotiate these differences. Okay, because all the people are not same. Okay, we have differences between the people. We cannot just permanently resolve these differences, but yes, we can make some steps, or we can negotiate these differences. Means we can do something so that these differences can be lessened out. Okay, means we can reduce these differences. We cannot just fully we can and we cannot just fully resolve these differences, but yes, we can make steps so that these differences can be lessened. Democracy is best suited to produce this outcome. Okay, to lessen these differences between all the people, democracy is the best way so that we can resolve these differences. Ability to handle social differences, divisions and conflicts is thus a definite plus point of democratic regimes. Means what do democratic government do? They handle social differences. He can be of any caste, he can be of any religion. Okay, he has the right. Okay, any division. But the example of Sri Lanka reminds us that a democracy must fulfill two conditions in order to achieve this outcome. But if you are seeing the position of Sri Lanka or the condition of Sri Lanka, there are two things which are very necessary so that we can achieve this outcome, we can resolve these differences. Now what are those? Two different, what are those two necessary points? We will see one by one. First one is, it is necessary to understand that democracy is not simply ruled by majority opinion. Okay, democracy just does not mean that who is having the rule of majority will win. Okay, the majority always needs to work with the minority so that government functions to represent the general view. Obviously, majority has to combine with the minority, or majority has to take the help of the minority so that the government can work as a general. Majority and minority opinion are not permanent. They are not permanent. They are temporary. Majority can have different opinion. Minority can have different opinion. But these two, majority and minority, these two have to work hand in hand so that they can represent a general view. This was the first condition. Then the second condition is, it is also necessary that rule by majority does not become rule by majority community in terms of religion or race or linguistic rule. Okay, means if any democratic government or if any party has a rule of majority, that does not mean that it is a rule of majority of any community, any particular community, any particular religion. Okay, it is a rule of majority of all the people apart from the religion, apart from the caste. Rule by majority means that in case of every decision or in case of every election, different persons and groups may and can form a democracy. Now, what does this mean? That rule by majority means that in case of every decision, in any election, in case of every election, or if you want to take any decision, then different persons and groups may and can form a majority. Different persons of different race or caste or religion can come together and they can form a majority. Democracy remains democracy only as long as every citizen has a chance of being a majority at some point of time. Means, what is the meaning of democracy? By, for, and of the people. Means every person has to be included in a democracy. He has to be included in the opinion, right? It can be majority, it can be some rich people, it can be some poor people also. So democracy remains democracy till that time if every citizen has a chance of getting or being a majority, right? So these are two conditions which are very important so that we can achieve the outcome of democracy. Okay, so this was with accommodation. Now we have the point, that is dignity and freedom of the citizens. Now, what do you mean by dignity and freedom of the citizens? Democracy stands much superior to any other form of government in promoting dignity and freedom of the individual. Okay, if you're talking about other form of government, apart from those, democracy has been able to promote dignity and freedom to the individuals. They have the freedom, they have the rights. Every individual wants to receive respect from fellow beings. Obviously, no person will be or no person will think that I should be insulted in front of every people. Okay, they also want that they should get respect when he is standing in different when he is standing in a group of different people. He thinks that he should receive some respect. Often conflicts arise among individuals because some feel that they are not treated with due respect. Obviously, many times conflicts or we can say fights just arise because of this thing, that people think that I am not treated with respect. They are insulting me. So just because of this, what happens? There are conflicts and fights. Now take the case of dignity of women. If you are talking about dignity, we can take an example of women. Most societies across the world were historically male dominated societies. If you are talking about dignity of women, then you can just think about the ancient time, ancient societies, where these societies were male dominated societies. Those societies where only male were the head, okay, where women did not had any rights, any freedoms. The male dominated them, right? Long struggles by women have created some sensitivity today that respect to and equal treatment of women are actually always treated with respect. Long struggles means women have struggled for a long time or from a long period of time that they had today created a sensitivity in people that respect to and equal treatment of women are necessary ingredients of a democratic society. Means what that means, these struggles which are made by the women, this has created a sensitivity or created a feeling that women are also something in this society. Women are also an important part of a democratic country, right? But once the principle is recognized, it becomes easier for women to wage a struggle against what is now unacceptable legally and morally. Now, what does this mean? But once this principle is recognized, means what that means, that women, this principle that women are also an important part of the democratic government, if once it is recognized, what will do, it becomes easier for women, means it becomes easier for women to live a life with respect, okay, right, to wage a struggle against what is now unacceptable legally and morally. In today's life also there are some families or there are some cities, some villages where women yet are not considered more, are not considered much. But if we recognize this principle that women's are also, or respect to women's or development of women's also is necessary for the democratic government, if this principle is recognized, then women, then it can be easier for women for fighting their struggle, okay, which is not unacceptable today. The same is true of caste inequalities. Now, just this is not of the case of the dignity of women, but if you are talking about caste inequalities, there are differences in caste also. Okay, so if you are talking about caste inequalities, then it can also be true for these caste inequalities. Democracy in India has strengthened the claims of the disadvantaged and discriminated caste for equal status and equal opportunity. Now, in democratic country, means if you are talking about India, then it has also worked for the opportunities for the equal status of the disadvantaged and discriminated caste. We can say SC and ST, means scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. The disadvantage, those people who are not receiving the advantages of democracy, or those people who are discriminated, they should also be given equal status and equal opportunities. There are instances still of caste based inequalities and atrocities, but these lack the moral and legal foundations. Yet also, aparting from giving, apart from that democracy giving equal status and equal opportunities, yet there are caste inequalities, yet there are atrocities, okay, but that lack the moral and legal foundation. Perhaps it is recognition that makes ordinary citizens value their democratic rights. So, if you recognize all these things, all these principles, this will make ordinary citizens value their democratic rights. Right? Okay. Now, apart from all these things, we have talked about economic growth and development. We have talked about dignity and freedom of individuals. We have talked about accommodation of social diversity. Now, apart from this, what are our expectations from democracy? Okay. Now, what can be the expectation of democracy? That expectation from democracy also function as a criteria for judging any democratic country. Okay, to judge any country, that is a criteria. Okay, what is most distinctive about democracy is that its examination never gets over. Okay, as democracy passes one test, it produces another test. Okay, so now if we are talking about expectations from democracy, then it thinks we have to judge the democratic country. And what happens here, that if one test is passed by the democratic country or democracy, there is another test. Okay, so this means that the examination is never over. That is why when we ask people about the way democracy function, they will always come up with more expectations and many complaints. Okay, so this is the reason that democracy passing one test it another test is produced before the democracy. So this is the reason that whenever you are asking people about that what they expect from the democracy, they will say there are much more expectations. Okay, what the democracy has done, they will not say that thing, but they will say what they much expect much more from the democracy, and they will have many complaints also. The fact that people are complaining is itself a testimony to the success of democracy. Means if people are complaining, they are not satisfied with the democracy. So that means the democracy has to do much more better so that the people can be satisfied. It shows that people have developed awareness and the ability to expect and to look critically at power holders and the high and the mighty. Means what does that mean? If people are complaining, it thinks that their people are aware. Okay, they know that what is good and what is bad for them, and they are able to expect at the power holders that the people who are holding the power, are they able to hold the power or not. A public expression of dissatisfaction with democracy shows the success of the democratic project. Means what this means if the people are not satisfied, they are dissatisfied with the success with the democracy, that means that the democratic project is has to work. Okay, yet more. It transforms people from the status of a subject into that of a citizen. So this happens whenever people are dissatisfied or they are not satisfied with the democracy. What does that mean? It means that people are transformed from subject to a citizen. It means, sorry, it means that better the people expect, the better the government function in the democracy deepens. Means better if more the people will expect from the government will function more. Okay, and the democracy will deepen inside. Okay, so this was with expectations which are from democracy. That's all for today. Thank you.